Edoardo Affini, European time trial champion. Unbelievable, I hear you say, but it's true, friends, it's true. The Italian rider of the Rabobank team takes his first victory with the Dutch squad, his first victory in 5 years. After a career packed with second and third places in time trials around the world, he's now able to pay a tribute to the recently retired Robert Hessink, the man who was so close to testing for doping but fortunately did not test, despite being surrounded by dopers throughout his professional career. That a rider like Affini is European champion is just another sign that this championship is of little interest to the big fish. You can see a roster of winners like Stefan Bissegger, Syncrosfera Kampenarts, twice, or the previous champion and past, present and future crybaby Josh Tarling. At least it shows off the town where they're held, the beautiful, small Belgian town of Hasselt. Unfortunately, there was practically no one in the crowd to watch the suffering athletes. Even the Chinese competitions are better supported than this, the ones where the triumphant, dangerous Russian cyclist Petr Rikonov reigns, national champion of his country, without victories in his years as a professional in the Gazprom of Andrea Piccolo, but now at home on the Asian circuit of the UCI, pissing in the face of all his rivals, with up to 21 victories in this hilarious year of 2024. Now, given the lack of interest in these European Championships, the spotlight turns to the Canadian races in Quebec and Montreal. They've gained notoriety for the presence of an alien, recorded in the middle of the road, doing training sessions at 500 watts, and all the while whistling Green Day songs. We'll tell you all about this on the channel, but today we want to talk about a friend idolised by Poggy, the legendary German doper and strangler, Jan Ullrich. Now subscribe to the channel for more cycling content, and don't forget you can follow us on our official Twitter, @UncleCycling. That way you'll be able to keep up with all the news. And now, yes, let's analyse the latest statements from the German former alcoholic. Since Locos Lance paid huge amounts of money to get Ullrich out of alcoholism, in the same way that he's doing today with Bradley Wiggins, the legendary telecom rider's speech has been shifting towards the official selfie-le-patient line. And we don't say this because of his fondness for taking selfies with dopers. No, Jan, in his time, was one of the riders who was in contact with more doping doctors and who had privileged information, more privileged than most, to acquire the best substances on the market. But now he insists that cycling is clean, and improvements in nutrition, in materials, and changes in training are making all the difference. And if he had had those advantages, well, they would have made him fly more than EPO and growth hormones and blood transfusions put together. Laughable statements from a guy who really never cared about nutrition or training after July 1997. Can you imagine the freckled redhead giving up beer and greasy foods for rice and ketone gels? And moreover, he contradicts the doper and former rival, Ivan Mayo, who months ago declared in Jot Down that the main problem of the system is that directors like Dracula Gianetti or Moonlight Machin, who've been surrounded by doping for decades, are continuing to lead riders to glory. For the chubby telecom guy, it's okay for those characters to stay in cycling because, laugh amongst yourselves, if they know a lot about doping, they can teach the new generations not to dope. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh too much, dear friends, but Big Jan is lying through his teeth. And he's doing it for one simple reason. The former partner of our friend of the channel, and the Dane, because he's always a Dane, Bjarne Riis, he's in the process of collecting money by selling books, telling his story, documentaries, telling his story, museums, telling his story, where there are missing syringes and medical reports and even weapons with which he threatened other celebrities. Even his own bikes are missing because he sold them to try to recover some of the money he spent on vices of all kinds. Vices with which he endangered his own life and the lives of those around him. And of course, to make money, you need to be on the right side of the official discourse. And so it's now all about clean men with best bikes and better training who can pulverize your own records when you were a mutant, full of chemicals. Ah, those days, Jan. However, Jan, he always stood out for being, how can we say, not an overly intelligent man, a pure monster on the bike, pure brute force, but he was not a guy who tactically displayed any genius. Coincidentally, that has happened to him now, despite trying to follow the designs of Selfie-Le-Partillon, a guy who, by the way, has not taken away his Tour de France or his Vuelta a España or his Cycling World Championships, despite Jan having confessed to doping. Well, he's dropped some pearls that explain why doping can still exist in cycling today. A few months ago, he'd already said that it was the UCI itself that sometimes looks the other way. And despite knowing that there are cyclists who test positive in the anti-doping controls, they don't officially sanction them so as not to bring bad publicity on their product. Selfie-Le-Partillon is definitely taking this to heart. He only has to look at the drop in interest in the sport of men's tennis since the double positive for doping with Klosterball of Yannick Sinner. And so he makes sure that positives only come out from races in Portugal or under-23 riders that no one cares about, like the recent Kazakh Dostoyev. But in his latest interview in ADR, Jan wanted to go just a little bit further, and he insisted that also the sponsors are part of this farce of covering up the doping positives of cyclists, and for this he exposed his own case. The 2000 Olympic champion insisted that his own sponsors knew he was a doped rider, but they never withdrew their support, because as long as he was on the same side as the UCI, just like he's doing now, he would not be publicly condemned and his image would be clean, despite being a dirty cheat. In other words, Big Jan is telling us that as long as you follow the rules and guidelines of the guys in the suits who rule everything, even if you confess your own doping, you're not going to lose huge amounts of money from your sponsors. So really, why shouldn't a professional cyclist dope? If they gain money and prestige and power simply by being a lamb, then they can continue to enjoy the omerta, not only from the leaders of the sport, but also from their own sponsors, the ones who pay them. It's absolutely embarrassing. But the German rider did not want to remain silent at that. He was asked if, despite believing that the sport is clean, there is still a chance of some undetectable doping substance being in circulation in cycling. And then, there, the old Jan, who was always at the chemical forefront in his time as a professional, could not help but admit the truth. He said, maybe there are just a few of them, but some do continue to try to cheat. There are always people who want to get an advantage in any way, and there may be some of them out there. Isn't this starting to resemble some kind of contradiction? Mind you, it's a guy who, as we already told you, he wasn't the brightest light bulb in the chandelier. They didn't want to keep on jabbing, but with that answer, well, we would have asked, well, Jan, if it's true that riders are constantly running their mouths about tactics and techniques that give them an advantage, like sleeping in hyperbaric chambers or training with aerodynamic bras, and is eating loaves of bread really more advantageous than the latest chemical or doping technique that have been discovered in small, shadowy cycling circles? An answer would be interesting at that point, wouldn't it? Oh, well, remember, folks, that in the end the truth does always come out by one means or another, and characters like Ullrich may end up, no matter how inadvertently, telling the full story. And while you're here, you could stop by that video on the screen there. Yes, that one. You'll love it, love it.